Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you for joining us today. I'm Wendy. I think most of you know me as the head of Chiltern House. So we are gathered here today for a simple and brief e-parenting workshop. And we're covering the topic about raising a positive child today. So once again, thank you for taking the time to join us today. So I'll go through my slides, right, and I'll give you lots of examples and explanation. So I hope that you guys can follow me as closely as possible, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the very end. So as I'm going on, if you have a question, then please do type your questions in our chat group. And today I have two of our teachers supporting me as our tech team today. So then they will sort of gather the questions, and then I'll try to cover as many of the questions at the end of this session today. Okay. So once again, yes, I'm Wendy. I'm the head of Chiltern House. I've been in this industry of early childhood education for the last 15 years. And I have sort of grown and learned so much over these years. And I hope that, with my experience as an educator, as well as a trainer, and as well as with my background in psychology with a focus on child psychology, that I can sort of give you some insight and tips about how to raise a positive child. Okay, so we will start off with a quote from Barbara Fredrickson. So she's a fairly new researcher in the whole sort of emerging movement called positive psychology, right? And she, one of her quote, really caught my attention, right? She sort of basically summarize it that positive thinking broadens and builds, right? Including our self-esteem, our language, like our sense of well-being, right? But her focus is also about resilience in children. So I mean, we've all gone through 2020, and we're currently going through the pandemic too. So I mean, life has changed dramatically for everybody. And you see in the news, you read it everywhere now, like there's a lot of sense, there's a whole sense of pandemic fatigue, COVID fatigue, like a lot of anxiety, a lot of negativity around the world recently, like especially last year, and it's still continuing, somewhat. So of course, like being human, we tend to sometimes get drowned in all this negativity, right? And which is why resilience, right, in children and in adults is very important. So what do I mean by resilience? Resilience generally means the capacity or the ability to bounce back from difficulty. So once you fall, you can pull yourself up, right? So life is always full of challenges. So what we hope for ourselves as adults and as well as for our children and the future generation is that they're all resilient individuals, right? Because life is never just perfect, right? There's always ups and downs. So it's very important that a child can really bounce back up and not give up. So hence this quote really sort of resonate with me. So in terms of this topic, I'll just give you guys a very brief background about positive education, right? It's a somewhat new movement that has been given a lot of attention over the last 6 years, especially in early childhood. And generally researchers such as Martin Seligman, right, has come up with many theories about this whole movement of positive education. In Chiltern House, right, our values of edudrama, right, one of our key values of edudrama is positive education. So generally, according to researchers such as Martin Seligman, these are the five sort of critical areas, right, for a child to be positive, right? Positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning of life, a sense of belonging and accomplishment. I mean, there's this whole sort of wide area of material and information about this topic of positive education. So, do feel free to look it up, right? You can search for Martin Seligman. You can search it up as positive education. So many countries now are moving towards this movement, right, of inserting a lot of positivity into the education system. So back to why we are here today, right? So what can we do as adults, right? As educators, as well as parents, right? What can we do to sort of insert a bit more positivity, and so that we can sort of ensure that our children will grow up to be happy, right, and successful, right? So what I'm sharing today basically is general reminders, right? And it's something that a lot of parents have been doing, right? And maybe because of the pandemic, right? A lot of us adults, like while dealing with all this anxiety, sometimes we tend to overlook the simpler things. So I hope my workshop here today can sort of give you as can sort of act as a refresher, right, and a reminder, right, for all educators and parents out there. So what can we do as adults to raise a positive child? Point number one, right, encouraging play. Very simple. I mean, for us in Chiltern House, right, we are well known for our learning through play approach, right? So encouraging play is really important for a child, right? Especially when they're very young, the early childhood period, right? From the age of the infant all the way to 6 or 7. And there's also the point about, play is like meditation for adults, right? Um, and this whole idea of mindfulness, having mindfulness in your life, right? Play equates to that for the children, right? So when children are really playing, when they really engage, they're fully enjoying the present moment, right? So they're very mindful of what they're doing, right? So it's really healthy if you can insert more play into your child's life, right? And when we say play, we're talking about hands-on, unstructured play, right? And it's not playing on the iPad, like it's not playing video games, okay? So no screen time sort of play, okay? This is, back to the old school, play with mud, like play with paint, play with shaving foam, play with Play-Doh, being outdoor, right? Play with the grass, So, and based on many research on early childhood education, play gives so many learning opportunities, right? For creativity, for imagination. I mean, I'm sure you've seen your child, right? Playing with their dolls, role playing in their class. Many parents share to us teachers that, like they see the children, right? Role modeling a classroom, right? The children as the teacher. So it helps them with imagination. They're taking on the role of somebody else, right? And when you let your child play, you're also giving them opportunities to fine-tune their fine motor skill, gross motor skill, thinking and problem-solving skills. Yes, when they play, especially the puzzles, how to put this together to make the train track longer, right? So all this equates to opportunities for them to try and figure it out. And then, of course, the whole social part, right? Playing with friends, playing with adults, right? Or even playing alone, right? Um, I had a parent who asked, "Oh, my child always play alone, right? Is that healthy?" I mean, of course, balance is always good, right? But playing alone actually helps your child learn to self-regulate, and they learn to regulate their own emotion. They learn to entertain themselves, right? So they don't always need an adult to give them the attention. They don't always need the iPad or the TV to give them attention. They can entertain themselves. So that is also a very, very important social and emotional skill. So, try to also encourage your child to play on their own. Okay. Point number 2, okay, so as adults, I hope that we can always try to create opportunities for wonder and exploration in our children's life, right? Simple step like, make observations with your child, right? Um, when you're in the car, right, you see the traffic light, point and highlight, oh, look, we are at the traffic light now. Tell us the traffic light. Then, depending on your child's age, right? Some will be able to respond. Some may not, right? The really young one, but the idea is to make the observation with your child, right? Point and highlight, right? Let them wonder, give them that sense of like, oh, look at the sky is turning gray. I wonder what will happen next. Right? So give them that sense that, oh, let them think. You don't have to always answer them immediately, but creating that opportunity to let them wonder and explore on their own sometimes is very helpful. Modeling question and thinking. So similarly, like how you question your child, like what do you think will happen next? If there's a sun and it's still drizzling, right? What do you think I'll see in the sky? Right? So usually the older one will be able to answer that, right? So how you model your question and allow them the opportunity to think about it and maybe even go and do some research, right, to get the answers is really important for a lot of the older children, like like the 9-year-olds, the 10-year-olds, right? You can always randomly ask them, I wonder why do we hear thunder, right? Or what causes thunder, right? And then let them, go online, search for the answers. You can create a whole weekend sort of project, out of this one question, right? Do experiment at home with your children. And with all this questioning and allowing them to think and searching for solution, you are creating innovators and problem solvers. So point number 2 and 3, very closely related. Allow your children to question, right? So let them ask you questions too, right? I mean, we always hear parents and teachers, oh my goodness, right? A child will always ask why and why and why and why, like, so these are really good predictors, that your child is thinking, right? So don't shut it down, right? And if we ask your children question, then try to ask open-ended question, right? Don't always ask a yes and a no sort of question. And exploring and engaging our senses. So this also ties into play, right? Giving them the chance to explore, right? How do this puzzle work, right? And how does Play-Doh feel like? And when I touch the salt dough, how does it feel like? Is it cold? Is it hard? Is it soft, right? So using our senses, especially with the younger children, right, is their way to figure out how things work in our environment. So I hope all parents and teachers alike will continue to have all these opportunities at home and at school, right? And for example, like in Chiltern House, part of our value is that, we want our children to be always engaged in hands-on activities. Hence, we're not the school, right, that already introduces tablets to 4-year-olds, right? We still prefer the hands-on and very sensorial sort of activities. Okay, point number 3, communicate, right? And this ties into the language. And also what I mentioned earlier, right? Ask your children questions, right? Give them the opportunity to think and then answer. And we as adults, we must be ready to also discuss and explain. And one of the hardest things to do is listen actively. I'm not just talking about listening, right? But listening actively, which means you have to put away your cell phone, right? Give your child the full attention. I mean, I am also guilty of it, right? Like when a child is talking to me, sometimes like my niece and my nephews, and I'll be on the phone like, okay, yes, oh really? So I'm not really giving them the full attention. And I've seen a lot of parents do that too, Hence, sometimes the child is frustrated, because well, mommy and daddy is always on the phone. They're not listening to me. So let me go and cause some ruckus at home so that I'll get their attention. So sometimes when your child throws a tantrum, he or she is also trying to tell you, right? Please give me attention. And we teachers see that in the classroom too, right? Sometimes when a teacher is caught up with a certain activity, and then you have a few that, okay, I want to get my teacher's attention, they started shouting a bit, speaking a bit loudly. So all these are ways that children are trying to communicate with us. So we as adults, I think we owe them the respect that when they are speaking, we listen to them fully, right? It's basically active listening. So, and also about the whole idea of giving them the chance to answer question. So for this point, I've sort of gathered a few videos that I've got from CNN actually. So this happened a few weeks back, I think, maybe about a month ago. It was a global incident. And I'm sure some of you remember when I mentioned the massive container ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal, right, in Panama. It was in the newspaper, right? It was in all the news outlets, there are several memes being created because of this incident too. So it's a global incident. So what we as adults, we can turn this incident into a teachable moment, right? So when I saw these videos, I thought, wow, it's a good reminder that even for a child as young as 3, we could use this incident as a teaching moment. So basically, my point here to all of you is that take the time to ask children questions. Don't give them the answer straight away. We are not helping them to think and come up with their own answers if we constantly just feed them and spoon feed them the answers. And this brings me to my experience as a teacher too in class. When we do stories in Chiltern House, we always pause and ask question. What do you think happens next? Oh, why is the elephant stuck, right? Or how do you think the lion can help the elephant out? Then children will have their different explanation, and it's great to see all the different answers because they are using their own experience, right? Using their own language capability to share, right? No one is right or wrong, but as long as we give them the opportunity to share. So I'll just share these several videos, and you can hear what are the responses from these children, right? And we have children from as young as 3 to as old as 7 or 8. So basically, this is the children's response, right? When their parents or their adults ask them about, what do you think we can do to get this container ship unstuck? So let's see from the first video from a little girl called Charlotte. She's age 3.
I would try to lift it out.
You try to lift it out?
With some strong things.
Like what?
Like tweezers.
Tweezers?
Tweezers. I think that works too, right? So she's applying, right? I can use tweezer to take things out. Okay, something is stuck. And there's the next video about from a girl, Mavis. She's also 3.
There's a tow truck.
A tow truck?
I mean, this is a popular response, right? Like, oh, what happens if the car breaks down or the train breaks down, right? Call the tow truck or call the mechanic, right? So a very popular response. And the third one, this is quite funny, from a boy named Leo, also 3 years old.
Do you see that boat stuck right there?
Yeah.
Now tell me, how did you get that boat out?
With Godzilla.
With Godzilla?
Yeah.
Okay.
He can lift it up.
So you can see some of the thinking process, right? The child equates Godzilla to be strong, right? So Godzilla can literally unstuck the ship container, right? Can move the ship container. Oh, we had two more responses from slightly older children, right? The next one is from Eleanor, age 6. And looks like, I think the mom actually gave her blocks to sort of emulate the whole shipping container, right? So she used Legos to build a shipping container. So let's hear from her.
A long piece of metal string. We might just be able to turn this boat from sideways to straight.
So who would be pulling on the string?
Well, 1,000,000 people. I don't know.
1,000,000 people. So she knows the shipping container is huge. So we need 1,000,000 people to pull it, right? And not just one. And last one from a girl named Emmy. She's 7.
I think they should dig around it so that it has little spaces for it to turn, because it's wedged in here and now it can turn.
Excellent. So I'm sure we all know what was the resolution, right, to this global incident. How did the authorities sort of managed to get this ship unstuck, right? So it's very close to what the last girl proposed, Emmy, right? Basically dig around it, right? And then eventually the boat has space to sort of turn. So just from these videos and using a global incident like that, parents can use it as a teachable moment, right? So allow your child these kind of moments to think and ponder, right? And turn it into a play activity too, like what Eleanor did, right? Using blocks to build a shipping container, right? You can turn it into a bath time sort of activity or a sand and water play activity. There's so many different ideas, that you can use to sort of create all these teachable moments for your child at home. So I think the key point is that we adults, we always need to communicate with the children, right? Don't let the TV do it. Don't let the iPad do it, right? Nothing beats real and honest and real-time sort of conversations. Okay, the fourth point, focus on the process, not the product. Basically, to sum it up, is praise the effort, right? And there's a lot of research and information about this topic. Generally, sometimes us adults, we're all guilty of it, right? We tend to look at the results, right? How many A's, how many B's, and we put children on a rating system, and we forget about the effort they put in, right? And a lot of researchers in child psychology, in positive education, that sort of point that the whole overemphasis on achievement, especially if it's results based, it creates higher level of anxiety in children. And there's this one professor, right, of psychology, Carol Dweck. So I put down her quote here, right? So she did studies of how adults praise the child and then the children's response after that. So she basically summarized that children praised for their intelligence actually wanted the easier puzzle. So in her study, she was using puzzle. And because the children wouldn't want to take the risk of making a mistake. Because if they make a mistake with the harder puzzle, then the adult wouldn't call me smart anymore. So if you praise a child, oh, like that's so smart of you, it gives them the impression that, oh, like if I do it perfectly, right, with no mistake, then I will get that praise. But life is not perfect, right? Everybody makes mistake. So in terms of teaching resilience too, right, we need to teach our children that it's okay to make a mistake. Um, so Carol Dweck really put it down quite clearly, right? So when we praise our children for the effort and the hard work that will lead to achievement, then they want to keep engaging in that learning process. They are not distracted, right? With the concern that, oh, my mommy won't think I'm smart anymore if I make a mistake. So for example, praising your child, right? Like by saying, oh, thank you for not giving up. I know you were struggling with that puzzle, right? But I saw you kept trying and trying, and finally you finished it. Instead of saying, oh, wow, you finished it so fast. Okay, let's see if you can do it faster for the next puzzle. So your child will learn that, okay, if I pick an easy puzzle, I'll finish it faster, and I'm even smarter. But then they will choose tasks that are easier and easier. So when they go on to real life, in school or later on in the adult life, we are not filled with simple tasks, and there are always challenges, right? So basically, in terms of our role in how do we model children to be resilient, right? The way we praise them, right, is plays an important part. So remember next time, right? Praise your child for not giving up. Praise your child for trying. Sometimes they get frustrated, they throw the puzzle. Okay, fine, take a break, and if they go back to it and they try, that is the sort of achievement that we should sort of praise the children, right? They didn't give up, not because they complete the whole puzzle within 5 minutes, or because they completed all the spelling with no mistake, right? So I hope that we can all keep that in mind. Number 5, emotions. Okay, it's a big topic, right? And this topic sort of will link to the next topic, right, about emotional intelligence. So generally, my point here is that, like as adults, as parents, and as educators and teachers, we need to be very mindful of our own emotions, right? So how do we raise positive children? Sometimes we need to manage our own emotions too, because for children, we adults, we are the role models. So firstly, be happy yourself, right? How happy you are will dramatically affect the children's sense of well-being, right? Their confidence. And like I said, we are all role models. So a healthy home and a healthy school environment will definitely increase the likelihood, like that our children will be positive. And of course, the language we use, right? If we are constantly focused on the no, 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 right? Why are you so bad? Like, oh, why are you so naughty? Right? Then all a child will hear is the word bad, the word naughty. Hence, we need to sort of be conscious about the language we use. For example, like in Chiltern House, we are trained to try and always use positive discipline, right? Which means we don't label the child. What is naughty? There's to a 4-year-old, what is naughty, right? It's a word, like, but it sounds like a label, right? But we don't use the word naughty in school here, right? We turn the attention to the behavior itself, the action, right? So why are you not listening to me? Why aren't you not focusing? So we turn the attention to the behavior itself, because we can change the behavior, right? But if we label a child naughty, right, it doesn't give any meaning. So the way we use our language to discipline the children, the way we speak to a child is very important. We will always try to say, please use your walking feet, instead of don't run, don't run, don't run. Because to a child, all they hear is run, 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 run. So we will try to rephrase the sentence into a more positive sentence. And as adults, we have to be aware of our body language and expression, right? And if we speak to a child when we're frustrated, right, like the child will feel it too. And if you scream all the time, and then your child will also model and mimic that. Like, remember, we adults, we are the role models. So sometimes if you're really angry, right, walk away, take that space if you need to, right? Because if there's a constant sort of instant reaction, when your child misbehaves, for example, right, a constant reaction to anger and screaming, right, then we are creating an environment, like that is not very healthy for the child. So the child will start to learn, okay, screaming is fine, like, and it's also important for us to, as adults, to acknowledge our emotion, right? Yes, of course, we're human. Sometimes we will lose it, right? Like, and we tend to raise our voice. And then maybe the child will get scared. Oh my God, mommy screamed, daddy yelled, right? Like, so after that, like, don't be afraid to apologize to your child, right? I'm sorry that mommy yelled just now, right? And then move on to reason and explain why. So then, once everything is calm, you must allow that acknowledgement of emotion. Yes, mommy was angry just now, and then explain why. And then also explain your expectation next. So basically, this key point is that, we adults, we need to be very conscious of our emotions, our actions, our body language. I mean, we have parents who say, I don't understand why my child's always screaming, and not realizing sometimes, the adults at home are always screaming. My next slide. So like I said earlier, point number 5, managing emotions, and point number 6 is closely related, right? How do we teach our children emotional intelligence? So here's a very simple explanation. What is emotional intelligence? It's basically the ability to recognize our own emotion and of others, and then use this information to guide our thinking and behavior. And then and also, right, study our emotion and of others, and then that will help us to adapt to our environment. That's why they say people with higher EQ, they tend to be able to insert themselves in a lot of social interaction much better, right, with somebody who has a lower EQ. So how do we teach children that, right? It's very similar to what I mentioned earlier, right? That we need to acknowledge the information, the emotion, and we need to identify, right, and empathize, and also validate, right? So for example, your child scream at you, I'm so angry at you, I hate you. Okay, I mean, we always hear that from the children sometimes, right? And key thing for us adults is that, okay, we acknowledge it. Yes, I hear you. Sounds like you are very mad at me. Maybe you can tell me more about that feeling that you're feeling. And then we prompt, are you feeling disappointed because I said no to you buying that new toy? So we try to give the children a reason why they're feeling that anger, right? It's because of disappointment that they couldn't get that toy. And then also acknowledge that, okay, yes, like if the tantrum continues, yes, I see that you are sad, you are angry, right? So we want to validate the children's emotions. I mean, generally, we also hear a lot of the old school thinking, right? Saying, okay, you shouldn't cry, you cannot cry, boys don't cry. I mean, all these are just sort of giving the child the pressure to not express their emotion, and instead they're suppressing it, which is not healthy at all. So remember, empathize with your child, right? Identify the emotion and validate it. But of course, right? I mean, we can validate negative emotions. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel disappointment because it's life, right? We always go through this. But if the emotion cause certain unacceptable behavior, or like if they start hitting or biting, then of course we have to sort of um, uh, teach the boundaries too, set the boundaries that, just because you were angry, it's not okay for you to bite your sister, for example. So of course the boundary is important, right? Certain behavior we cannot condone. But like, if they're screaming and crying, then yes, okay. Looks like you're really angry. You need to scream and cry. Okay, let's move you to this room. Scream and cry all you want. Once you calm down, once you're done, then we can have a conversation. So give them that space to sort of let the emotion run through, right? Because if your child is screaming, you are screaming, it'll be a whole screaming party. So, and that wouldn't be healthy for anyone. Okay, number 7, I'm down to my last 2 points already. So, I mean, this is a very sort of general and important sort of point, right? Building positive relationship. I mean, as humans, we all need relationships to sustain, right? And the relationship has to be meaningful and genuine and consistent. So I put it there and I highlighted consistent because we can't expect it to be like, okay, I will spend reading, I will do bedtime with my child once a week, and that's enough. It's not enough, right? So children, especially young children, they thrive on routine and consistency. So if you don't spend consistent time with your child, right, then the relationship wouldn't be that deep. So spending time with your child is very important, and it has to be consistent, right? So if a working parent, right, who probably sees the child only once a week for 1 hour, right, it's not enough. So do bear in mind, right, when we are working with young children, right, the routine and the consistency is very important. Hence, as teachers too, we see that our children, they will develop really quickly, progress very quickly if they are consistent to school, right? Because then they have the time and space to work with the teacher daily. And but if a child who's always absent, right? This week I'll come twice, next week I won't show up at all, and I'll come back 2 weeks later, the bond with the teacher and student bond is also not as deep. Progress is not as fast too for the child. And usually we see that these children who are always skipping school, they tend to fall back. And it's so hard for the teachers to help them to catch up. So when we're working with children, consistency is very important. And it's also our role as adults to help our children create a sense of belonging, right? Being in a family, being in this school, being in this community, in this book club, right? In this art class, in this ballet class, right? Feeling that sense of belonging, having play dates, right? Helps make a child happy. And don't forget again, once again, we adults, we are the role models. So how we manage our relationship, right? With friends, with colleagues, right? Like with our extended family, right? Between mommy and daddy, right? The children are always there watching, right? I mean, they're learning from us. So we need to be good role models. And don't forget to have fun with your child, right? That's the best way to build a very positive relationship. And one key point I also added is that school and home, right? No matter which school you're in, I mean, that you choose for your child, right? School and home needs to be on the same page, right? We must practice a very good partnership for a child to be happy, and the progress will be on the same page, right? Sometimes they only spend a few hours in school and the rest are at home. So if school and home is not on the same page, right? Like sometimes in school the child will follow the routine really well because teachers are firm, right? But at home there's no routine at all. The child can do anything they want. So there'll be misalignment, for example, right? And the child will find it really hard sometimes. Oh, how come at home I can throw my vegetables away, I don't have to eat them, but in school our teachers are trying so hard to encourage me to eat my vegetables. So a child can be very confused too. So the school and home, right, having a good relationship has a very, very huge positive impact on our children. Last point, okay, I have one more video for you. So self-regulation, basically self-regulation skills point to the ability to regulate my emotion, right? I'm angry, right? To the point that I would need to throw something, but I regulate my emotions myself. Okay, I know that, okay, throwing something across the room is not good. It's not acceptable. It may hurt somebody. I may hurt myself. So this is what we learn, right, over time. When and we as adults, we can definitely self-regulate our emotions better. But for children, right, we can start very early on. Teach them how to self-regulate, or how to resist temptation, right? When we see uh, a child, right? Oh, I want that toy, I want that toy, right? So how do we teach that they need to sort of distract themselves from the reward, right? How do they regulate that need that they want, uh, that sense that they need that want to be met immediately, right? So I mean, it's a huge topic in child psychology, and in my slide today, I would like to just show you a very simple and famous, actually, a test, right? Done by many child psychologists, and it's called the marshmallow test, right? So basically, it's testing a child, right? How strong is their willpower, right? And how long can they sort of hold off to get that reward, right? How do they regulate themselves, right? So this is called the marshmallow test. So you will see children trying so hard to resist the marshmallow, right?
Okay, sit in that chair. All right, here's the deal. Marshmallow for you. You can either wait, and I'll give you another one if you wait, or you can eat it now. When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have two. But stay in here and stay in the chair till I come back, okay? All right. I'm gonna go do something and then I'll come back.
It smells yummy. It smells really good.
All right, so it's up to you. You can have it now or you can wait. Okay? I'll be back. Stay in the chair, okay? Okay. right, so I'm gonna leave and then I'll come back, okay? So you can either eat it right now or you can wait. Either way, okay? Okay. How'd you do? Did you do good? You did?
Yeah.
You wanted to eat it, didn't you? Yeah. So did I tell you to give you another one? Okay, now you can have both. You need them.
So yes, right. After watching the video of the marshmallow test, right? So basically, a lot of researchers, right, after spending hours of studying observation of children, right, going through this test, they've come up with several theories, right, that what's really important is that attention, right? The whole how we allocate our attention will help us determine our willpower. And with that, distraction is a very powerful tool to use for young children. And basically, from the research, they found that children who waited the full 15 minutes, I think they are supposed to wait for 15 minutes. They did that by distracting themselves, right? Singing songs, clapping hands, tapping, right? And not looking at the marshmallow at all. But for a child who just stare at the marshmallow way from the beginning, then they tend to eat the marshmallow a lot quicker, right? So they can't hold off the whole 15 minutes. So it's a similar approach that we adopt in school, right? So when a child wants something, we distract them, right? We remove the what they want, right, and distract them with something else. And also for the older ones, you can see in the video, they'll be able to do better compared to the younger one, right? I mean, we saw some example of the really young girl, right? The moment the adult left the room, she ate, right? So your level of maturity of your child will also determine that, right? Their willpower. So basically, how do we teach that with children? Is that if we don't encourage, if we don't want a certain behavior, then we don't allow the child to see it, right? So basically, from the research too, that they tried with covering the marshmallow, that also helps, right? So for example, if you don't want your child to buy a new toy, then don't bring your child to the toy shop, something like that, right? Or for the older ones, then definitely, right? Prompt them beforehand, right? That we're here to buy a gift for somebody else, right? For your friend's birthday party and not for you, right? So imagine if we buy it quicker, then we can go to the party earlier and you have a longer playtime with your friends. So we turn the attention to the reward, that there is benefit if they wait or if they held on to their willpower, right? So like what the study did, right? Like, so if you are able to wait and not eat the first marshmallow, what's the reward? They get a second one, they get two, so sometimes letting the older children see the benefit of waiting, right? And focusing that on the reward, that will also be helpful. So teach children the consequences sometimes, and also what will happen if they don't wait. So you can find out more about this marshmallow test. I mean, there's plenty of information on this. But I hope that, try to insert the simple tips about speaking to your child, right? Focusing the attention, right, to benefits of distraction, for example, right? You can try to do this test, with your child at home, right? And this when I saw this video and I was working on my slide too, it reminded me of how we do separation with the children here in Chiltern House too, right? So sometimes when they are, especially the younger one, when they're so reminded with they're missing mommy, right? Like so we remove that, right? We don't speak so much about mommy, right? I mean, we address it that mommy will come back, right, to pick up later, and then we distract the child, right, with activities, with stories, with puppets, right? And that technique will help with the separation too. But of course, when they're older, right, then definitely the whole explanation, okay, you know what, after this, we have snack, we have lunch, then you see mommy later, right? And we will explain to the child, right, okay, what they can learn, and they can show it to mommy later. So it also depends on the maturity of your children, right? So the older they are, of course, you can use a lot more complex sort of tips on how to get your child to wait and increase their willpower, right? So that was my last point, right? Teaching self-regulation. So here's a recap, right? My 8 points, right? Or what of some of the simple tips of what we can do as adults to increase positivity in our children. And as a conclusion, I mean, when we ask parents, right, generally, what do we want most for our kids? What's usually the most common reply, right? It's always happy and healthy. So hence the importance of positivity and happiness, right, in the child's journey, right? Like, so yeah, so I think that's all I have for you today. Yeah, questions. Let me check with the tech team. I think we have some questions. Okay, we have a parent that asks, how can I encourage my child to be more positive in mindset, be more confident, instead of risk averse, reluctant to try, and lack of confidence? Well, I think it's many factors, and I hope certain tips just now that I covered will help you in that sense. So look at the language you're using with your child, right? Is there an overemphasis on achievement, or is there an overemphasis of like you cannot make any mistakes, an overemphasis of trying to be perfect, right? So is that happening in your child's life, because that will also affect a child's risk aversion, for example, right? If he or she is constantly being pressured into not making a mistake, everything has to be perfect, or why are you doing it this way, this is wrong, let me show you, a child will feel that, oh, I can't make a mistake, so they wouldn't explore as much, right? So the language that we use, how we praise the child. Remember the point number 4 about praising the effort, not the product, right? I remember I had a parent a few years back who got really upset because the child, it was a sort of art and craft. I think it was a theme art and craft, a bear, and the child put like the eyes on one side on the bottom, one side on the top, so it's very Picasso-ish. And the parent got upset with us not teaching the child the right way, so what I explained to the child, to the parent, that firstly, we are working with a 3-year-old child, right? So they can see a sample of the art and craft, right? That, okay, this is how a bear looks like, but this is the child's art and craft, and this is his way of expressing themselves. So we're not so focused on getting the art and craft correct, right? It's basically the child enjoying. And as teachers or adults, we say, oh, where do you want to put? We have 2 eyes here, so we can guide them. But if the child still chooses to, oh, I feel like putting it here, I'm like, okay, this can be a very creative piece of art, right? Like, so it's like how Picasso broke boundaries, right? Like by creating not so acceptable sort of art way back in history. So similarly, try to reflect on how do you praise your child, right? Is there an overemphasis on achievement, right? When she makes a mistake, Is she shame, is she being scolded, or like, is there basically making her feel shameful, right? Instead of like reassuring her it's okay to make a mistake, right? So uh, yeah, so the language and the communication, and how we praise the child, right? So if how you reward the child too, right? If you're only rewarding, oh, I will buy you this if you get 6 A's, for example, right? Or if you get everything right, and not looking at, like, how hard the child is studying, right? How much effort they put into practicing, for example. So, I mean, these kind of responses from the adults, right, generally will affect a child's sense of positivity and confidence. I hope I answered that question. Um, how to strike a balance between being positive and instilling discipline? A very good question. Okay, we balance this every day as teachers in the classroom with the children. Yes, it's a fine line, right? Like, but I think we need to clarify, right? Being positive doesn't mean that we always say yes, right? That we are lenient, right? It's very different. It's apple to oranges, right? Being positive doesn't mean that we are lenient, that we will allow it, right? I think it's always a misconception that if I'm always positive and happy, then I'm just allowing my child to do whatever they want. No, right? Being positive is basically not focusing on the negatives, but yet you're still setting boundaries. So it's once again boils down to your language, right? How you word it to your children. So I hope that we as parents and educators are not confusing that, being positive means that we must always say yes, and we must give in to the children no, right? You have the right to be angry. So like what I mentioned just now, managing your emotions, teaching emotional intelligence. It's not to say that you have to be happy all the time, because that's not life, right? Life is a balance, right? I mean, our whole goal is to have a balance, right? There'll be good and there'll be bad. So there'll be happy emotions and there'll be negative emotions. So positive discipline or positive education or positive parenting is about acknowledging that balance, right? So yes, it's okay for you to cry, right? But if you it's okay for you to be angry and cry. But if when you're feeling angry and you hit or you bite, then that is not okay. So is that setting that a reasonable boundary, right? So it's not, saying yes all the time and give in to whatever whim your child wants, right? That's not being positive parent at all. And yeah, I think we have time for one more question. We have one question here. Okay, yeah, I think this question is very relevant, especially when I mentioned that, like, I mean, we are currently still going through a pandemic, right? And it has been a year plus already, right, since last March. And I mean, I think the world is sort of spinning on a very sort of negative note. So even we adults, right, sometimes we tend to tilt towards the negative because of what's going on, right? I mean, the world changed dramatically last year. So, and the impact it has on children, right? And I mean, to be honest, with the whole school closure last year, and the lifestyle change, right? We are not allowed to go out as freely as pre-COVID time, right? So, children are always cooped up at home, less engagement for play dates, like going to ballet class, going to tennis, swimming, right? Just playing in the condos playground, right? That's also risky too. So all these lost opportunities, right, will definitely have an impact on the children, right? And when we came back to school this year, we all feel it. We see it and we feel it. Like, I mean, we really feel it. So it was a very tough transition, right? but we anticipated it. We prepared for it, right? And we're still going through it. We were still helping our children in Chiltern House bridge that gap, bridge that learning gap, not just in terms of academics, but also in terms of their social emotional skill. So this parent asked about, my child hasn't been attending school for many months since the MCO. He attended online classes, and he doesn't have any peers, right? And of course, I'm sure the parent also sort of stopped him from socializing. And now he's turned from a happy boy to a very withdrawn individual. So yes, I think a lot of parents are going through the same situation, right? I mean, the key thing is that, if it's permissible, then please allow the child to go back to school. I mean, especially for the early childhood education, definitely the whole physical classes, face-to-face learning is the most effective, right? Because it's all the social moments in class, the incidental learning with the teachers. So acknowledge, right? I mean, I would advise this parent, like, do acknowledge your child's anxiety, right? Once again, communicate, right? And ask, is there anything else that's going? And it also depends on how old is this child. I mean, the parent didn't mention how old is the child. But if they are slightly older, then you need to use your language and investigate. Is there underlining reason, right? Maybe this child really, really misses going out, right? I mean, last time I used to go to school, I used to go to my cousin's house, my friend's house, my neighbor's house, the playground, all my classes, and even family dinners, right? We go to try different restaurants. I go to shopping mall all the time. But now I'm just school and home, school and home. So maybe that's also the reason, right? Like he's withdrawn because he's sad about something, right? um and children are very intuitive, right? They can feel the anxiety of the adults. So sometimes too, when we teachers, we are a bit more heightened, then we tend to notice that the class is a bit more chaotic, right? Same with parents, right? We always advise new parents when they're dropping off the child for the first time, if you sort of display your anxiety about separation, right, about school for the child, then your child will feel it, and the separation will be even harder, right? So they can sense our anxiety. So I mean, I'm just going to throw back to this parent, like, is that your household a bit more anxious, right? Is there a lot of fights going on, right? Like or is your child witnessing, like a lot more arguments with the older siblings, like, so the anxiety level, right? A child can sense the anxiety level in the home as well as in the classroom too. So there are many factors why, right? But basically to find out, right? Use language and communication time to find out, is there an underlying problem, right? Maybe it's because due to somebody said something in school. So I mean, it's not permanent, right? Like the key thing is to, like, acknowledge that behave, that feeling, that emotion. When it looks like you seems very sad, like, how can I help you, right? um and keep it consistent, right? Play with your child, right? Make it a fun time with your child. So maybe it's because that he or she misses mommy and daddy because they're also busy working. Right now we're working from home sometimes. So even at home, it's like parents are working. It's no longer family time, right? So don't forget the point about, building strong relationships. So don't forget to have family dinners, right? That's very important, and it's an important time for a child, right? Oh, I get to see everybody at the table, right? With no phones or iPads. I think in this time and age, right? Everybody is so used to just, okay, at the table, but we're all engaged with the phone, right? So it's not healthy too. Then you're showing your children that they're not important. You are teaching them that, okay, it's okay that I'll just focus my attention to my phone, right? That talking to each other is not important anymore. So yeah, so try to put away the screens. I know it's tough sometimes, but we need to do it. I mean, we cannot be overly dependent on the screens too. So yes, I think I went way overboard with time. Oh, I'm 8 minutes overboard. Okay. So yeah, I think that's all I have for everybody today. And for those of you who has put in the questions, right? If I didn't get to answer it, then I will definitely go through it and then put it to my best ability, try to answer it, and then we'll email it to everybody. Okay, so once again, thank you everybody for joining me and my tech team today. Right, I hope that I was able to share some tips, and that this workshop has been a simple reminder, right, not to overlook the simple things like having dinner with family, putting away your phones, right, and speaking to your child, right. So well, to the next time, right. So thank you again, and have a good evening.